Well, hello, listeners, and a good Wednesday morning to you. That's when we're recording this, on Wednesday morning. It is tough. I know the struggle we're all in with Labor Day, because you show up on Tuesday, it feels like Monday, Pastor. Your whole day is your whole week.
It gets thrown off.
You're off.
Yeah,
you're
that's
like,
right,
where am I? What day is it?
And then people expecting things to be done on Wednesday, and you're like, that's tomorrow. But no, it's not.
No, it's today.
Yes.
Today is Wednesday. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, of course. We know people listen at different times. But it's a good week. It's a great month. Pastor, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great, and it's good to be with you today.
We are here in September, like I said. Labor Day, kind of the unofficial end of summer, I've heard.
I've always thought of it that way. You know, I know that it's actually like the 21st of September, but to me it's kind of the unofficial end. And, of course, in Florida, it continues to feel like summer beyond even the 21st. But still, it's a changing here.
I choose to think fall is a state of mind, Pastor.
State of mind.
That's what I'm choosing.
That's why you're wearing a scarf.
I got my pumpkin spice latte, and I'm ready for fall.
I'm ready for a little pumpkin creamer. That's what I do in my
That's
coffee.
what you do?
Yeah.
You're not the pumpkin coffee guy?
Not the latte guy, but, I do like pumpkin a lot.
Yeah. So. We're here. We're football is here. We got to talk about it. UF 1-0, undefeated.
The Gators won. My FSU friends are encouraged. They lost, but it was a fantastic game.
Sure was.
And I think that game got a lot scarier for the Gators now, because I think FSU looks like they got a team, and the Buccaneers kick off this week. So
tomorrow as we record this.
Yep. And we're still looking for our tickets, aren't we?
We are still open to them. The doors are still open. Phone lines are open now.
That's right.
If you have them, again, it's just you're. Oh, I forgot. I got a
I'm sure that's what it is.
Dentist appointment. What am I going to do with these tickets? You think of your friends, Pastor Willie and Anthony Russo.
That's right. We would hate for you to get that toothache tomorrow.
Right. It's important. Dental hygiene, so important. So important. I always question, here's a rabbit trail I didn't think we'd go on. Whenever I'm at the dentist, and if you're a dentist listener, feel free to reach out, and they're like, you should floss. It's good for your heart. And I'm like,
your heart? I don't know.
Part of me wants to call baloney here, dentists. You're pushing this narrative.
My mom was a dental hygienist, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know
that. So I'll get a fact check on that.
Appreciate any feedback, because I don't have the heart to look at my dentist or dental hygienist.
Good for your heart.
But
you doubt it, though. I can see that you just doubt it.
Question if you could just the knee bone's connected to the shin bone. I get some of it. But boy, to get from my teeth to my heart feels
like a stretch,
like a little bit of a stretch. But dentists, feel free to weigh in on that.
I'm going with the dentist on this one.
You probably should. You absolutely should. Some exciting things coming up this coming Sunday, which would be, I think it's the 12th. Again, I should have these dates more lined up. I think it's Sunday the 12th, is beach baptism.
Yes, it is the 12th, yep. That's this coming weekend, and it's always an exciting time to see people baptized as a testimony of their faith in Christ. And we also just use these days as days to really encourage people, if they've not been baptized biblically, to be baptized. And, of course, maybe most importantly, there are those who have been processing their relationship with Jesus, or they may show up Sunday and they didn't even plan on it Sunday. But it's going to be an opportunity to invite people to make a commitment to Christ and to follow Him. And we finished the Acts 8 series with a great story of the Ethiopian eunuch. So, and then we have our beach baptism at Sand Key. It'll be a great day.
Going to be exciting. So we'd love for you to be a part. You can get all the information on calvary.us. You can also let us know if you want to be baptized there. We know there's been a long layoff. We haven't been able to do as many of these the last 2 years or so, probably. Right. So if you've been looking for an opportunity, I'm spoiled, I know. Beach baptism to me is like, it's what you do, but it is really a gorgeous event, evening, special time. It's beautiful. It's very special. So if you've not been to one even, you should come out and just support all these people taking this public profession of their faith. It's really a beautiful night. And you get to see Pastor Willie out there dunking people left and right.
Added bonus.
Added bonus,
yeah.
So it's gonna be fun. We hope that you can be a part of that. We got to meet Brent Reeves this last weekend. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, presented Brent and Melody to our church family. We're glad to have them here and get involved, and our church family will grow to love them in a great, great way.
Pastor Brent is taking over our X150 leadership that Pastor Jeremy, who left a couple of months ago, maybe now, a couple of weeks ago. Time's been flying. But yeah, we're excited to have Pastor Brent here and excited to get to know him more. So it was a great weekend. As always, we will put the link to the service last week in the description of the podcast if you missed it. So here's something I wanted to talk about today, Pastor. Are you ready?
I'm ready to go.
To talk about this today?
I'm ready to go.
I wanted to talk about something. It's a word. Wasn't this common. Now I feel like a lot of people are familiar with it or have read an article about it at least or something. Kind of an idea called deconstruction.
Yep.
Deconstruction is the idea. And we've touched on this in the past. I was remembering before we sat down today, we did a podcast on, I forget, there was a term for like just walking away from the faith. And I'm not remembering the term now. But
a lot of there's a vogue term called ex-evangelical.
Ex-evangelical, that's a good one.
That's made, I think, it's very popular online and Twitter. So I don't know if that's the one you were thinking about.
Something like that. But we talked about some people that had very publicly walked away from the faith. People that used to be voices in the Christian or evangelical community that have said no longer. And so...
Yep, it's happened to a couple singers. Some of the contemporary Christian singers that's happened. But there's just a whole, and then Joshua Harris, of course, was very famous as who was a megachurch pastor, really, and then kind of walked away from that for further study, and then walked away from his marriage, and then lastly walked away from his faith. So, and was recently interviewed on the Mars Hill podcast, which created a little bit of buzz. So, but this whole idea, there's a whole community of that really is advocating, I would say, deconstruction of faith, and they come out of an evangelical background, and so there's this group, ex-evangelicals, who are celebrating that they have deconstructed their faith and rejected the Christian faith they were given as in their younger years.
And as with most terms, it is hard to exactly cement into place. Deconstruction looks different for different people. They'll use it in different. These terms are often really fluid. Can't recommend enough, and we do it all the time on this podcast. If you hear someone say that's what they're going, you should ask, what does that mean to you? What are you going through there?
Right.
Because it could mean different things. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because it doesn't always mean I'm rejecting the faith. I know people personally who would say they have gone through a time of this, and it did not end in,
correct.
I'm done with faith. I reject the idea of corporate church and potentially Christianity at large. So I wanted to talk some about that, because to me, Pastor, it feels to me like it's a very millennial trend. I would say it's very strong in that demographic, and we're in our 30s ish. So it seems to me like there's some maturing in going on there. Like a maturing of your faith might mean that it goes through a deconstruction process. Might mean it goes through some things that you were taught as a child that you are either choosing whether I'm going to continue with this, or you're choosing what does it mean to me now. So that's what I wanted to ask you about today. How do you grow and mature and make your faith your own? And maybe that's what you would call your deconstruction process. And how do you do that well?
That's a great way to say it, because I think to some degree this is not abnormal, and it doesn't necessarily need to be unhealthy, even though it can feel very, very threatening. There is we all mature in what we understand. There is a stage in life where we believe what we believe because our parents told us to believe it, or the people that we believed in told us to believe it.
Yeah.
We all know there's a time in life we believed in Santa Claus for a brief moment. Right. Why? Because we were told to. Yeah. If we had been told green lizards fly in and put food in the pantry, we might have believed that too. And then, of course, as you got older, you figured out that was a myth. Yeah. That wasn't true. My parents were lying to me from the beginning.
Yeah.
But there's that tension of, this was a game. This is a pretend thing. And unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say necessarily unfortunately. As you age, things that you learned and assumed to be true as a child obviously get deconstructed. Mm-hmm. You assumed your parents were the greatest, smartest, strongest people in the world.
Sure.
Until you began to realize they were not. And then you became a teenager and you thought they were the dumbest and most evil people in the world.
That's right.
That also got deconstructed at some point. Then you get in your 20s and you think, oh, they're pretty good.
Right.
And then you get in your 30s and you think, they were geniuses.
That's exactly.
And then in your 40s, they were the greatest people who have ever lived on the earth. So you go through periods like that. But similarly, I think when you talk about faith, and this is true with in all belief systems. Like, you may have been told growing up, this is who we are politically. This is who we cheer for. Sometimes as you grow, you begin to evaluate those things on your own.
That's right.
Certainly, with something that is as faith-based as faith, that it's subjective. It is a belief system. It is that you're going to ask questions, and for some people, that's going to be an easy period. You have those core convictions, and they pass naturally and easily into adulthood. For other people, there may be a crisis where all of a sudden you begin to question, are these things that I held to be true indeed true? Things that I cannot empirically prove. Things that many people, perhaps most people in the world, do not believe. Can I accept them as true?
Yeah.
Now, again, for some people that works very healthy as they shed some things that need to be shed, but ask important questions, delve deeper, get stronger, and their faith literally emerges stronger, an adult faith. Whereas for others, it can be a great crisis.
Right.
And there are people, of course, who at least temporarily walk away from the faith, some permanently.
Yeah.
Now, I think your question was, how do we do that well?
Yeah.
Well, I think it is by learning to ask really good questions and not overreacting when we don't have answers. And this is just kind of shooting from the hip here, but I think as we get older, asking some really good questions, learning to ask questions that differentiate between childhood things that must be discarded and can be discarded, and trying to ask the questions that peel back the onion, so to speak, to get to the heart of the issue. Let me explain what I mean by that. I think when you hear about people deconstructing their faith, and by the way, if somebody tells you that, I think what you said earlier is very good. Don't freak out. Don't freak out if you're a parent and your kid's saying, "Hey, I'm struggling with something." Don't just freak out like this is the end of the world. Obviously, be concerned.
Yeah.
But the right thing to do is help them ask questions, like you said. What does that mean to you? So here's what I would say: there's going to be a point in adulthood when you're going to see things that were not as you assumed them to be. You were told the Bible is true. You just accepted that. Now you get into college. Hopefully we can begin training our students way before then. You start going, well, wait a second. Somebody wrote the Bible. Where did it come from? Who put it together? Why these books and not other books?
Right.
Well, these were ordinary people, weren't they? Weren't they flawed just like I am? Weren't they limited in their knowledge just like I am? And you begin to study where the Bible came from. You learn about manuscripts. You learn about the fact the Bible wasn't written in English. You learn about the fact it's been translated. You learn about the fact we don't have original manuscripts. There isn't like the official copy of the Bible. What we have are copies of copies of copies.
Right.
You begin to learn all those things, and all of a sudden, that you begin to go, wow, do I accept this as authoritative or not?
Yeah.
Then you begin to look at the Bible and realize, hey, some of it's poetry, some of it's history, some of it's preaching.
Yeah.
Some of it may seem to be different than other parts. Some of it may seem to contradict other parts, which I don't think it does, but certainly as you begin to look at it, it looks that way. So here's at that point, you're going to either allow your initial questioning to cause you to turn away from the faith, or you're going to ask better questions. Mm-hmm. And you're going to lean in and say, how do I get answers to the questions I'm asking? Mm-hmm. What I would say to anyone going through a process of deconstructing is you're not asking any questions that other people have not also asked and answered throughout history. And by the way, people who have retained and grown in their faith have asked the same questions that you have asked. What happens, sadly, is that people get in a situation where all they're hearing is the one side of people who are asking the questions and who are trying to dismantle faith. And instead of asking questions of those questions, they just assume a whole new set of dogma. That is, somebody now begins to question the Christian faith, and they just accept that to be true. Right. So when I say ask questions, what I'm saying is, don't get lazy. Don't settle, okay, so some things have rocked you.
Yeah.
Well, don't stop there.
Right.
Keep searching. And don't just talk to people who have rejected the faith. Talk to people who have grown in the faith. Mm-hmm. Because there are people who have wrestled with the same questions about morality or scripture or doubt that you have, but who believe as strongly, indeed more strongly, than they ever have. Yeah. So I would say learn to ask good questions and seek really good answers, not just one-sided information.
Yeah, and you've talked about this before, and I think it's just so good with questions like this. A question that has rocked a lot of people. I know we've talked about it here. You've talked about it on Sunday mornings. Is why, if God is good and all powerful, and why do bad things happen to good people? A lot of those words in quotes. But there also, you have to be ready for there not to be a fortune cookie length answer. Mm-hmm. Here you go. That's super easy to answer. We have it here just stashed away. That it might be a bigger, people would write whole books on this stuff.
Yeah. So volumes and volumes. And so, yes, you get to a point where so it doesn't seem as simple as you once thought it seemed.
Right.
Okay. Very good. That's an important place to be.
Yeah.
Because you're likely going to get there eventually. So it's important that you're now going, wait a second, how do I know what I believe and why do I believe what I believe? And you have to, I thought like what you said, you have to accept that it's not a fortune cookie answer. And the other side, the people who maybe are skeptics and critics of the Christian faith, don't have that answer either. Mm-hmm. So these are questions that are challenging questions, and they deserve serious thought and serious investigation. But you ask how to do this well, just because you have questions or are struggling with doubts or have these unanswered questions, don't push away from people of faith.
Right.
Lean into it.
Yeah.
And if you run into somebody who can't answer the questions, don't freak out. Maybe they weren't equipped. Maybe they were nervous. Yeah. But that doesn't mean there aren't people who can answer those questions. Mm-hmm. There absolutely are those. It's not too hard to stump the pastor. If you want to play stump the pastor, like, how hard is that? But, okay, I stumped my pastor, or my Sunday school teacher didn't have an answer, or my mother couldn't tell me, who Cain's wife was or something. Well, that doesn't mean there's not an answer to the question.
Yeah.
So by ask good questions, I mean lean in and look for good answers. What you're going to learn in the deconstruction period is sometimes it's not what people believe, it's why they want to believe it. And much of the deconstructionists are people wanting to get to a place where they don't believe in God anymore. Why? Because they want to live a life they want to live. They want to reject a certain moral authority that seems out of step or decidedly inconvenient for their life. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, history is full of young college males who decided they didn't believe the Bible anymore because they wanted to sleep with their girlfriend. And they found out that sleeping with their girlfriend was really fun. So they either were going to live with a lot of guilt, or they could just conclude that, the Bible isn't that relevant for today.
Right.
Because Susie really is very cute. So, the Bible and belief in God became decidedly inconvenient. And therefore, deconstruction wasn't that serious as much as it was, I just want to live my life the way I want to.
Right.
Now, that isn't minimizing that for some people. It is a very serious thing. Serious. And I respect that. Yeah. I respect that, the people who ask questions. But let's be honest, a lot of it is, I just don't want there to be a God.
Yeah, and I think I've even seen studies about the amount of people who have experienced a very significant trauma or hurt in a church,
that's
that they're then like, well, this would be a better conclusion for me if I could just throw this whole thing out. But a couple of things you touched on I think are really great, because one thing about Joshua Harris, who we touched on earlier, he was a very big leader in the purity culture movement, what some people have deemed. He was an evangelical voice, leader of a megachurch, like you were saying. He rejects his faith. Well, here we go. X amount of months or years later, whatever it was, I don't know the timeline exactly. He comes out with a course on deconstruction that he starts offering people and he got a huge backlash online. And I think he's pulled the course.
He walked it back, yeah.
But when you say like who are you following and why are they leading you in this direction, I think is a really important question to be asking when you're seeking counsel during this time.
Yeah, it is. Look at the motives of your own heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to talk about the trauma thing for a second that you jumped up, because I think that's so important. Because I think when I think if you look at motives for deconstruction, one is I just don't want there to be a God. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be under his authority. I think another is, though, I have been deeply wounded by religion or religious people or religious things, or if not wounded, maybe deeply disappointed.
Yeah.
At some point, you realize your parents are not perfect when you grow up.
Yeah.
And at some point, you will realize that, your church is not perfect. Mm-hmm. You will, everyone will be disappointed at some point, but some people are traumatized. There have been situations where pastors have turned out to be charlatans and just complete fakes. There have been issues of sexual abuse, other types of behavior. Mm-hmm. And I think the first thing we should say is, gosh, we understand. I mean, even if we don't fully understand, we can understand how incredibly traumatic that is, and empathize with those who have been traumatized by religious organizations, institutions, or people. I understand that as much as any who could conclude, I'm not sure I can believe in God. And then, therefore, I must deconstruct my faith. Mm-hmm. And so first of all, I think there are some very serious. There is some of it that I don't have as much patience with, and that is a lot of this evangelical culture, talking about the silly things they heard in church or the imperfect things that they observed, and now it's popular to kind of kick what happened in my youth group or make fun of my pastor or have fun. That was kind of stupid. They said stupid things. Mm-hmm. Here's my impatience with it. And and again, I want to be patient when I need to be patient for those who really are struggling with something. But also just receive this challenge. There is no family that's perfect. Mm-hmm. You grow up, and you know what? You could grow up in a healthy home and fixate on something your parents did wrong. Mm-hmm. Fixate on where they weren't perfect. Fixate on something they didn't see correctly or do correctly. And I suppose you could be ungrateful and bitter about that all your life if you wanted to be. Mm-hmm. I've just never understood the people who see that side of it but don't see the other. And when you look at a church, look, I can, even today, I can think of things that probably were done that were stupid, and I was in great churches, but I can think of youth camp. I mean, my mind goes back to some, sometimes things get said at youth camps, or, speakers come in and they say some silly things that I literally laugh about today. Mm-hmm. I can remember, honestly, a couple of things that I look back on and I would roll my eyes and go, I can't believe we had a guy who said that.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't fixate on that. Mm-hmm. You know what I fixate on? I had healthy faith communities that taught me there was a God, that taught me there was a God who loved me, who gave me the truth about Jesus, who taught me there was a purpose in life. And, I just think you can look at the imperfections or you can look at the gifts. Mm-hmm. And I just don't, maybe we just are coming from completely different frames of reference, but I just don't understand those ex-evangelicals who just want to disparage their churches. Maybe their churches were completely horrible. I don't know. That's possible.
Yeah.
But I doubt it. And I just want to say, you can look at the failures or you can look at the beauty. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's both.
Yeah.
And I choose to look at the beautiful truth that imperfect people brought to me. The beautiful gospel that imperfect people managed to communicate to me. And here's what I just want to say to a person going through deconstruction. What exactly are you deconstructing? Mm-hmm. Is it your church experience or Jesus? Just tell me what you're deconstructing. The question that I don't think Mike Cosper ever asked Josh Harris, and I thought Cosper did a good job. We're talking about the Marsville podcast interview, and he did a good job on that one. I was not optimistic about that broadcast, and I wasn't eager to listen to it, but I finally did, and he did a good job. But I wish somebody, and he talked about, leaving his faith, and Cosper shared the gospel, some of the gospel with him. But the question I just want to ask is, don't talk to me about your church. Don't even talk to me about your faith. Talk to me about Jesus. Mm-hmm. Have you deconstructed Jesus? Mm-hmm. Do you no longer believe Jesus is the Son of the living God who died and was buried and was raised 3 days later? That's what I want to know. I don't want to know about how traumatic your childhood was, your goofy church, or the legalism. Because, look, if you're deconstructing your church experience, a lot of that needs to be deconstructed.
That's right.
Even in a healthy church.
Yeah.
Even in healthy situations, you should be. Look, as a young pastor, I deconstructed some things. I said, hey, they did some things this way, and I don't think you have to do it exactly that way.
Yeah.
It was completely healthy.
Right.
None of my leaders were ever threatened by that. And it's interesting, the older I get, I'm starting to reconstruct some of the things they did, because I'm not going, there was some wisdom in some of that. But there's a healthy process of deconstructing myths that are in my own mind that I've attached to Scripture, or interpretations that I heard that I attached, and I elevated them at the same level of Scripture, and now I'm going, wait a second. The Bible actually says this. I was told it said this. I'm not sure it actually says that, But what that does is it draws me closer to a biblical faith. So to me, if you're deconstructing your church experience, well, that can be okay.
Yeah.
If you're deconstructing your theology and that process leads you to separate myth from Scripture, or interpretations you were given from what the Bible actually says, that's healthy.
Right.
But why? Because it's taking you back to the Bible. But why? What I hear is a lot of talk about deconstructing church culture, and even some theology that you were given. But what about Jesus? And you don't hear them deconstructing Jesus that much, because I'm just not sure what you can say about Jesus.
Right.
Except, you're going to eventually come back to that old C.S. Lewis choice. Is he a liar or is he the Lord? He's got to be one or the other. And I still don't hear a healthy deconstruction that can lead me to accept Jesus as merely a good person. I've yet to hear a convincing argument for that. So I hear a lot of deconstruction about church, and you know what? We probably deserve some of it. We've done some stupid things. We've had some stupid views. We've held some interpretations that, I can't, there were eschatological views about end times, which I got as a child. And I just assumed that's what the Bible said.
Yeah.
Till somebody goes, no, where exactly is that in the Bible?
Yeah.
And I go, it's right here. And I turn, I had a youth pastor, had a speaker said this, I'm turning over there. Well, I think it's in here somewhere. And I'm like, well, maybe it's not there. And so I had to read it for myself. And I came away going, okay, now I see that was a person's assumptions and interpretations. It actually isn't what the Bible said. That's deconstruction.
Yeah.
But because of that, my theology is healthier today.
Right.
Because I deconstructed interpretations I was given, assumptions I was given, and I was forced to go to the Bible for myself. That's healthy deconstruction. But you know what? It made me love the Bible more.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was interesting as you were saying that. I was thinking, you talk about deconstructing Jesus. Well, it brings back the famous story behind the book More Than a Carpenter, where I think it was More Than a Carpenter, where Josh McDowell sort of set out to disprove Jesus, tear apart the whole story of Jesus, and came to a faith. Like I don't think he had a faith before that. So that's super interesting and a great read if you've never read that. But I love something you started with. I think is a really beautiful way to think of this. You talked about almost your view of your parents when you're little.
Yep.
Because you have a sort of mythological view of your parents, right? Your dad is Superman, maybe.
He can do anything.
He can do anything. He knows everything.
He's the fastest human in the world.
Yep, we have...
I can remember watching my dad run a race with him and thinking, he is the fastest human in the world.
I'm laughing because my son thinks the same thing about me. He's like, it doesn't get faster than my dad. That's it. He also thinks I can fix a lot right now, which is, if you knew me, you would know it's very not true.
Exactly.
He will learn that one day. But then you go through a process of like, wow, okay, so some of these myths were not right. He is not there are people faster than my dad, people stronger than my dad. And then for so many people, and I'll pause here to say, we know that there are people on other sides of this who have bad family relationships and
very bad,
and it's not good. But for those that have a loving relationship with their parents and it was good and healthy, you get to the other side of that and you go, you know what? He's not the fastest man in the world. He's not Superman, but he is great. Yeah. He was really special. And he really loved me in some ways I didn't even know. I couldn't even appreciate it.
And the love is what's the most powerful thing. Not that your dad was the fastest human in the world.
Right.
But that he loved you more than almost any human in the world. And
yeah.
That's what is real. Now, you spoke about the trauma, and I'm glad, because maybe some people don't have that relationship with their father or mother or something. But you don't give up on marriage. You don't give up on the idea of family.
Right.
Most people don't anyway.
Yeah.
They even if you had a traumatic family, the idea of what a family should be was still there. Mm-hmm. I've run out of people who have said, look, I'm working. I work extra hard on my marriage and my relationship with kids. Why? Well, because I didn't have a good relationship with my dad. Mm. And you go, well, good for you.
Yeah.
You didn't abandon the idea of family or marriage because you saw it flawed. Mm-hmm. And what I would say is, just because you saw church done poorly, don't give up on the idea of spiritual community.
Yeah.
And no, it doesn't have to look exactly the way it did in your church. It doesn't have to look exactly the way we do it here.
Yeah.
But there is still that importance of faith and community that you shouldn't give up on because it's real and it matters. And so for the people who have been traumatized, that's what I would say. I understand why you wouldn't want to ever go back into church.
Yeah.
But don't give up on the idea of God or spiritual community just because evil touched your life.
Yeah.
And if you grow up, and it's like most people, it's a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. Well, don't become so fixated on what was bad that you forget to be grateful for what was good. Because how many people have grown up saying, well, I'm going to do it better than my parents. Like I'm going to be the perfect dad. And till you have kids, right? And then, especially you have your second and third kids. And then you're like, okay, this was a little harder than I thought it would be. It is hard to spend time and all that.
Yeah.
And you grew to be a little more patient. My point is you grew and you began to understand the imperfections of others. Church is going to disappoint you. Mm-hmm. People are going to disappoint you. There are inevitably going to be barnacles on the ship of myths and interpretations and assumptions that get attached to the core message of the gospel and biblical theology. Good deconstruction is scraping the barnacles off, but repainting the hull and then taking the ship out deeper than you've ever been. Bad deconstruction is saying, look at the barnacles and the worn out places on the hull. I'm never going sailing again. And that to me is well, of course it is a tragedy.
And or worse, I'm going to take this boat apart so no one may ever sail again.
Yeah. I'm going to blow this and every other boat I see up.
Yeah, because that to me is, you were talking about, you use the word lazy, and I don't like to throw that. For me, that's a very personal attack. I do not like that word.
Yeah.
But there is a sense of that, of like, even just the title, deconstruction. Let's just break something apart.
Yep.
Well, where's the end? What's the end game here?
What do you build? Yeah, you could ask that question. What are you building?
Right.
Deconstruction can be look, neither you or I are gifted in building things, I perceive, as you said.
I am not.
But we could pretty much deconstruct a lot of things.
Anything.
I think, given enough time, I could deconstruct a car. Yeah. I'm not sure how yet. I would start with a window shield. But, I mean, if given the task, I would have a lot more chance of deconstructing a car than constructing one. Yeah. There's no chance I could build one. Yeah. Zero chance. But you could pretty much just start pulling wires out and busting things. And when you hear a lot of these ex-evangelical voices, there is the predictable anger, the predictable resentment. There is a very famous ex-evangelical figure who is the son of a very famous pastor. And when you hear him and you just sense this is an open, overt, public rebellion against his dad. It's just open warfare. He won't say that that's what it is, but you don't have to be a psychologist to go, this is just open war against your dad. And it's painful to see, and I feel so sorry for them both that it's waged out in such a public way. I can't imagine wanting to hurt someone that badly. But pain comes from a deep place, and I don't know, everything that's going on. But when you see someone coming from a place of such pain and anger, it ought to give you at least caution. Something else is going on here.
Yeah.
And I think there is. So, deconstruction, there can be 10 different people going through 10 different things. I think what we've tried to say is it doesn't have to be unhealthy. It can be a good, healthy process that leads you to a greater spiritual maturity. Yeah. If you're in a point, and I've talked to people who were in a place like I'm struggling with some doubts. I'm asking some questions. I'm not getting good answers right now. And I'm struggling with my faith. That's a scary place to be. What I'm telling you is to keep asking good questions and seeking good answers and don't shut out people of faith. Don't shut out people of faith. If you're not getting good answers yet, keep trying, because there are people who can give you good answers. And keep trying. And once you've heard the very best answers from the very best people you can find of people of faith, and you've looked at it for yourself, then you can make your own decision. But don't just react because you have questions that you can't answer. Everybody has questions they can't answer. Yeah. That doesn't disprove God.
Right.
So that's what I would say a healthy deconstruction can be. And I think the last thing I would say is this is nothing new.
Right.
In fact, the Bible warns us that there will be the theological word is apostasy, to not believe or to reject faith. The Bible warns us this is going to happen. The Bible warns us in the last days it will happen more and more. So as unsettling as it is to hear someone that used to believe tell us they don't believe, the Bible told us it would happen, which I suppose is all the more reason why we need to sink our roots down deep and make sure we know what we believe.
Yeah. So good. Thank you for diving in on that. I wanted to share here as we wrap up a couple of things we have coming up, because I know some people are maybe going through this. Maybe you're trying to lay some groundwork. You're trying to rebuild some foundational stuff. Just wanted to share a couple of things, maybe have you tell us a little bit about some of these things we have coming up. The first one is starting actually tonight. And again, this podcast usually doesn't come out till the afternoon on Wednesday, but tonight we will begin streaming, and it'll be available online, the systematic theology class that we've been doing here at the Clearwater campus on Wednesday nights. So I feel like that would be it could fill in some foundational stuff. Would that be
Yeah, I'm teaching that class, and so for those looking for a midweek option, that's we've been videoing those, so it's a great midweek option for you to feel like you're staying connected to church, and it is a great class that examines the core doctrines of the Christian faith.
So that's going to be, we're broadcasting it. We're starting from week 1. Pastor Live in the Room is in week 3, I believe, but we wanted everyone online to be able to get it from the beginning. So we're starting week 1. That's tonight. But if you miss it, you can catch up and stay in touch that way. And I'll be on there hosting. If you have questions or thoughts or concerns or anything, love to talk with you there. And then a couple of weeks, we're starting a sermon series. That's kind of a worldview type series. Do you want to say anything more about that?
We're going to be examining Christian worldview, and it starts on September the 19th. It's going to be a 6-week series where we construct a Christian world. What does it mean to really see the world through biblical Christian eyes?
Mm-hmm.
And when we construct that worldview, then we will analyze some of the pressing problems and the issues that are causing so much division and polarization in the culture and even tension in the church. How do we process questions about justice or morality or all those things that are hot button issues today? Why is it that we see it the way we see it, and oftentimes that is so different than other people see it? It has to do with the lens that you're looking at the world through, world view. How do you view the world? And so we're going to be constructing together a Christian worldview and then examining some of the key issues of the day. I think it's going to be a very important sermon series.
Yeah, we're excited about that, and I just appreciate everything you said today. Again, we are so thankful to everybody out there who listens, who shares the podcast. One thing you can do that's very helpful, if you haven't already, wherever you listen to the podcast, if you leave a rating or a review, that's very helpful. It lets people know that you're listening and helps us get the word out. So thankful for all of you who do that, and we will be back here with another episode soon.